No cameras. No producers. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights in a quiet Flagstaff courthouse, where Meri Brown sat near the back of the gallery. Not hidden, but unreadable. She wore black. Not for mourning, but for clarity. It had been 12 years since Mary's voice had carried the weight it once did, back before the spin-offs, before the spotlight, before the silence became her armor. And now, as Christine prepared to submit her final round of financial documents, it was Meri, not Robyn, not Janelle, who suddenly stood. The court clerk froze, unsure whether to intervene. The judge adjusted his glasses, then nodded. "You may approach Mrs. Brown." For a moment, the room forgot how to breathe. Cody didn't even look up. Robyn looked sideways, lips compressing like a zipper attempting to shut off panic. Christine's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but she remained still. Meri moved forward with measured calm, heels clicking like a metronome ticking down to an event no one anticipated. She dropped a sealed manila folder onto the plaintiff's table and spoke clearly, no longer shaking. "Your Honor, I have a statement to enter into record. I kept quiet for 12 years. I will not keep quiet anymore." The judge stood forward, feeling what all the rest felt. This was not another testimony. This was a dam break. Mary's voice did not quiver. "I was left behind. I forgave more than I recalled, and I took his promises at face value because quiet was more comfortable than being called bitter. But the truth doesn't get quieter if you turn your head." Cody eventually raised his eyes, wan, and blinked like a man who never supposed she'd talk. "I have evidence," Meri went on, opening the flap on the folder with surgeon precision. "Private emails, bank statements, voice messages, and a letter in 2016 that was never intended to be heard in court but now must be read." The courtroom didn't gasp. It narrowed. Christine cocked her head as if preparing for impact. Janelle's face did change ever so slightly. Robyn went rigid. Meri took a breath and said, "That is what 12 years of silence appears to be like when it becomes clear." The judge gestured the clerk forward to take the folder, and then, having practiced it in her heart for all those years, Meri said, "And I want it all made public, all of it. Every digit, every apology I never received, because when the initially silent wife finally speaks up, what she says can tear down everything that was established on the basis of acting like she never would." The courtroom fell silent as the judge slowly opened the folder handed over by Meri. The rustle of paper from the envelope sounded louder than any gavel ever had. A single page had been put at the very top intentionally. One page by hand, folded at the edges and a bit stained near the top right, as if Meri had folded and refolded it 1,000 times. The judge read it, then looked up. "You wrote that in 2016, he asked. Meri nodded once. "I never mailed it. I was too scared. I believed if I remained quiet long enough, perhaps I'd be important once more." The judge handed the page to the clerk. "Read it into the record, please." The courtroom sat forward as the clerk cleared his throat. "To the man who vowed forever, I am aware now that your definition of loyalty was merely control in a more attractive package. I was never your equal. I was your stand-in until she came along. You left me in all the ways that matter, but retained my presence to keep the family presentable. You said forgiveness was the cost of belonging, but I never belonged, not after she came to live and you moved on." The room went still. Cody's expression hardened, a twitch at his jaw. Robyn sat stiff, eyes wide. The clerk went on. "You called me to the foundation once, but even foundations crack, and I've been supporting a house you slipped away from years ago. So here it is. I see everything now. The dinners that I wasn't invited to, the money spent without a vote, the birthdays forgotten, the account that I wasn't informed about. I kept quiet to save the legacy. But what kind of legacy is constructed out of silence?" A pin might have fallen and reverberated through all the pews. Janelle gradually turned toward Meri, something uncooked churning behind her eyes. Christine's lips parted slightly, shocked by the gravity of the admission, and then, as if the letter were not enough, Meri reached into her bag and produced a thumb drive. "This," she said, "is from my iCloud account voicemails. Cody's for the most part, a few from Robyn dates, times, context. I never erased them. I just figured they'd never be important now." The judge extended his hand. The courtroom technician rose, accepted the drive, and nodded. "Do you want to hear them play?" he asked. Meri did not blink. Play the one from the 3rd of November 2019. It's time someone else hears what I've carried alone for too long. And in that moment, the court no longer saw Meri as just the first wife. They saw her as the first witness to everything no one wanted to admit had happened. The technician connected the drive, static, then a click, then silence so deep, it had the walls themselves tilting forward. Then, Cody's voice, unmistakable. "Look, I don't know why you are still clinging, Meri. I am not returning. We can't continue to pretend this is functional. You need to stop trying to play like this family owes you something. You drove me away. You can remain for the cameras, for the optics, but emotionally, this is finished. Robyn is the future. She is the one who matters, not you." Background noise was non-existent. No sense of urgency, only cold, calculated dismissal. Christine avoided his eyes. Janelle clenched her jaw. The judge waved on the technician to proceed. "The next voicemail, and I told you, don't bring up that account again. You are not on it for a reason. You didn't contribute. Meri, you were absent. That is not me hiding stuff. It is me guarding what is left." The courtroom didn't gasp, froze. Even the court reporter paused for a moment. Robyn covered her face with her hands. Cody sat arms folded, eyes narrowing, but he couldn't help it. It was his voice, his words, and they weren't manipulated, they were crystal clear. The judge stared at him. "Mr. Brown, do you not admit to the legitimacy of these recordings?" Cody swallowed hard. "They're out of context," he responded. "They were private discussions." Meri stood up again. "Private discussions that illustrate how I was erased. You didn't just divorce me emotionally. You shut me out of decisions, money, and communication. I was forbidden to speak up, told I'd destroy everything if I did, so I didn't. Until then." She patted the pocket of her coat, produced a crumpled bank statement. "The account I was locked out of, $210,000 deposited between 2016 and 2020. Not a penny of it to me. And yet, I still had to tithe on the little I had, to donate to a communal house I wasn't permitted in. And each time I asked why, I received a voicemail like that one." The judge waved the statement forward. Robyn shifted uncomfortably. Cody leaned forward to his attorney, but Meri wasn't finished. "There is a third recording," she said, "made in January 2021, after Christine had left. Cody called me that night, and he didn't ask me how I felt. He asked me to publicly stand up for him. I refused. I believe you'll see why when you hear it." The courtroom technician tapped the keyboard. The file snapped open. Cody's voice again, this time edgy. "You think Christine's some sort of heroine? She destroyed everything. You need to get on television and make certain I am still respected. You owe me that. Otherwise, you'll be out for good. No card, no backup, nothing." And then the worst indictment of all, a hesitation. Then Robyn's voice softly in the distance. "She'll fold. She always does." The courtroom held its breath together. Meri stood upright and simply said, "Not anymore." The courtroom had never yet heard Meri speak with such exactness, but now the fear was gone. She approached the plaintiff's table calmly, unhooked her bulging shoulder bag, and extracted what nobody, not even Christine, thought she would present: a frayed red binder, fat and tidy, its plastic page protectors, full of dated papers, notes jotted in handwriting, and account statements. "I wasn't merely observing," Meri declared, her tone authoritative. "I was documenting on my own. For that day, I either had to justify why I remained or demonstrate why I departed." She opened it slowly, turning the first tab, reading 2013, Flagstaff budget cuts. "That was the year we were instructed to tighten our belts," she said. "Christine's groceries were reduced. Janelle's therapy stipend was cut. I was informed that my business could no longer utilize the family fund, and yet she held up a bank receipt enlarged and printed in color. This check for $24,700, cleared on the same week for landscaping at Robyn's property." Robyn looked away. Cody's foot tapped furiously. "None of us voted on it, none of us were told." Meri flipped to the next tab, 2015, LLC reallocation. "Here," she said, sliding a spreadsheet forward, "is where the TLC payment distribution changed. We were assured we'd get paid the same, but when I did my own taxes, I discovered my payoff decreased by 22%. I spoke to Cody. He attributed it to a network glitch. But later, Christine told me she was given the same script, Janelle too. It turned out the network glitch was a private pass, through entity registered to Robyn Brown. The judge's eyebrow shot up. Can you confirm this? Meri didn't blink. Yes, it is right here. She delivered a notarized affidavit from a previous tax preparer, used by the family in 2016. He was told to make Robyn's income priority payments. Christine's mouth dropped open. Janelle grumbled under her breath. I knew it. Robyn sat quietly. Cody sat back, glassy-eyed, with denial. I wasn't jealous, Meri whispered. I was loyal. I waited for a turn that never arrived, but what I did receive instead was a paper trail. She turned to the last tab of the section 2020 Meri removed. This, she explained, is a screenshot that I printed. It is our shared cloud calendar. I was removed from every family meeting invitation. This was a week after I had refused to stand up for Cody on social media. She indicated the highlighted entry. Christine and Janelle were still posted. I was deleted, not notified. Just removed quietly. The judge leaned forward. Was this deletion, do you think, done intentionally? Meri nodded. Not only was it done intentionally, it was deliberate. Cody didn't simply leave me, he cut me out. And I did let it happen because I believed that silence was strength. She shut the binder and spoke in a whisper, but abusers maintain control through silence. Not anymore. The courtroom was no longer listening anymore. It was holding its breath. Meri's binder rested on the plaintiff's table, like an armed grenade, every tab a chronology of betrayal, exclusion, and manipulation. But it wasn't only the papers that changed the atmosphere. It was Meri herself. For the first time in 12 years, she wasn't the background wife, she was the one telling the story. And that authority was catching. Christine slowly rose to her feet. Your Honor, if I may, she said, her voice crisp but cautious. The judge nodded once. Christine stood to turn to Meri, not as competition but as an ally. There were times, Christine explained, that I believed Meri was cold, distant. But now, hearing this, I understand she wasn't cold. She was being frozen out, just as I was, just as Janelle was. She produced a thin manila folder of her own. Cody, when I asked him in 2017 about shorted funds from our TLC pay, I was assured it went to production fees. I later found out it was wired into a side account, labeled Brown Legacy Fund. I wasn't on the fund, neither was Meri, neither was Janelle. The judge gestured for her to approach. Christine surrendered the paper, her hands firm. It is not strictly financial, she went on. It is emotional. Cody made us think that we were the issue, that we weren't supporting him enough, that we were privileged to be included in something greater. But what he created was not a family. It was a funnel. Cody finally lost it. That is not true, he yelled. You all agreed to this organization. Robyn grabbed his arm, saying something desperately. The judge slapped the gavel once. Mr. Brown, any more tantrums and you'll be escorted out. Cody leaned back, but the blaze remained in his eyes. Then Janelle rose. Her manner was always restrained, always level-headed, but today she was angry. I checked, she said coldly. After Christine departed, I ran my personal bank history and checked each deposit. More than $78,000 of family income in 2019 ended up in an account I had never heard of, registered in Wyoming under the Dalton Trust. The judge narrowed his eyes. Is that linked to Mr. Brown? Janelle nodded. It is his business pseudonym. I never found out until I asked a forensic accountant to help. It was picked out straight away, and Meri's binder. Undefined, it verifies all of it. Undefined of the trail doesn't simply point to fraud. It results in intentional restructuring to exclude Meri and, likely, us as well. Robyn grumbled. It was never intended to harm anyone. But Meri, who was now sitting with her hands clasped together, didn't even glance at her. You promised you'd keep me safe, Meri said softly instead. You let me vanish. The judge looked over the courtroom. We will now enter all 3 exhibits into the official record: Meri Brown's binder, Christine Brown's fund report, and Janelle Brown's financial audit. A buzz of tension returned to the room. A slow realization. Meri's voice had broken the seal. Undefined, and nothing Cody said from this point on could undo what had just been spoken aloud. The air inside the courtroom now throbbed with something new, momentum. What started as Meri's long, suppressed voice had turned into a cascading storm of evidence, testimony, and quiet revelations that could no longer be denied. But just as the judge was preparing to call for a short recess, Christine stepped forward again. Her tone was calm, but her words were surgical. "Your Honor, I'd like to request a late addition to today's witness list." The judge blinked. "The court will consider it." "Who?" Christine turned toward the back of the room and said a single name, Dayton Brown. And in that moment, Robyn's head snapped toward Christine so fast it looked like a muscle tore in her neck. "No," she whispered audibly. "He is not involved in this." But it was too late. The doors of the courtroom swung open, and Dayton strode in, tall, pale, plainly agitated but intent. He had a small laptop and an envelope sealed. "Objection," Cody's attorney shouted, rising. "This witness had not been made known." "Overruled," the judge replied. "This is a civil proceeding, and he is directly related to more than one of the parties involved." Robyn grasped Dayton's arm as he walked past. "Don't do this," she whispered. But Dayton did not relent. He stood, raised his right hand, Saturday down, and opened the laptop. "Your name?" the judge asked. "Dayton James Brown, relationship to the defendants? Robyn's son, Cody's stepson? Or at least that is what I thought." A chill weight fell over the courtroom. "You may proceed," the judge said. Dayton glanced around, panting but regular. "I was asked to digitize some family financial documents in 2021. Cody told me it was for taxes and filing. I complied, but while going through it, I noticed something that didn't add up. A regular transfer called Emergency Account 4, always cashed out, always from the mutual family business account." He stopped, but when I checked the withdrawal slips, the name on it wasn't one of the wives. It was Cody's alias, Kevin Dalton, and the pickup person was Robyn Brown. Gasp running through the court. Robyn's face went white. "That is a lie," she yelled. "You are confused." Dayton shook his head. "I am not. I took screenshots. I emailed them to myself. I printed one. It's here." He handed it to the court clerk. The judge examined the document silently, his brow furrowing. "Are these authenticated?" he asked. Christine stood. "They match Janelle's findings, and the withdrawals correspond with Meri's documented removals from the calendar. Every time Meri pushed back, money disappeared." Robyn looked like she might vomit. Cody leaned toward his lawyer, whispering furiously. The judge looked back to Dayton. "Why bring this up now?" Dayton's eyes welled. "Because I had no idea what I was a part of. And because I noticed how Meri was treated every family dinner, like she wasn't even there. I didn't know it cost something." Christine reached out to place a hand on Meri's shoulder. "You weren't left out," she breathed. "You were erased on purpose." And in that moment, Meri didn't shake. She didn't cry. She simply nodded because Dayton had confirmed the truth she'd lived with for 12 years. The silence hadn't been hers. It had been enforced. The judge sat perfectly still, fingers templed beneath his chin, as he reviewed Dayton's screenshots, Meri's binder, Janelle's audit, and Christine's fund report, all now part of the official court record. The clerk whispered something into his ear. He nodded, and then looked up. "This court is mandating a forensic audit of all Brown family holdings and related pass-through LLCs as of 2013. Robyn gasped. Cody sucked in a breath, white, knuckling the defense table. "If this financial structuring is manipulative," the judge went on, "we might transition from civil hearing to criminal inquiry." That was the first time Cody appeared genuinely shaken. Not furious, not combative, but afraid. His shoulders dropped as if the decade-long weight of control was falling from his hands in the moment. His attorney leaned forward, whispering once more, insisting that he keep his cool. But Cody wasn't cut out for quiet. He stood up abruptly. "Fine," he said out loud. "You want truth. You want the whole story. Let's tell it all out loud then." The courtroom was at a standstill. The judge waved him down, but didn't interrupt. "Meri was hard," Cody growled. "She was cold, critical, passive, aggressive. She was emotionally remote. We hadn't been close in years prior to Robyn. Irrelevant to the financial realities, the judge interrupted, but Kody held up a hand. No, Your Honor, allow me to complete. He regarded Meri now, his eyes blazing. Yes, I took you off the calendar. Yes, I stopped inviting you to dinner. And yes, I said that you didn't get to have a voice in some of the decisions anymore. Because frankly, you'd stopped being part of the solution. The courtroom hung in silence. But did I mislead you, number? I said it repeatedly that things were changing. You remained. You remained because you believed remaining made you right. Well, it did not. Christine jumped up. She remained because you told her things would be like they were before. You promised her false hope, Kody. Kody laughed harshly. And you wanted me to continue ruling like a dictator. You were all good with polygamy until you were not. Now suddenly I am the bad guy. He turned to Meri again. You believe your binder validates something. It shows that I was finished a long time ago, and you were too arrogant to recognize it. Slowly, Meri stood, hands folded in front of her. The judge opened his mouth to stop her when she spoke, serenely, distinctly. Then why didn't you let me go? Kody stiffened. What, if you were finished? If I was nothing, why didn't you say so in public? Why did you make everyone believe we were still one big happy family? Why did you make me smile in front of cameras, cook for parties and sit through gatherings and reunions and let you treat me like a ghost? Kody did not say a word. The room was silent. And then Meri stepped one step forward and asked the question that was laden with 12 years. Why did you keep me around? Kody blinked. Because, he hesitated. Because I needed you there for the show, for the image, for the network. You gave legitimacy to the family. And with that, the courtroom didn't explode, it imploded. Robyn buried her face. Christine closed her eyes. Janelle muttered, unbelievable. And Meri, finally, nodded. There it was. The affirmation she'd been waiting more than a decade to receive. She was never wanted. She was just useful. The silence following Kody's confession was thicker than the courtroom walls could hold. Undeafened, even the judge sat back in his chair, a flicker of shock flashing behind his otherwise stoic eyes. Undeafened, Meri's entire body remained still, but her expression told the story. She wasn't surprised. Undefined, she was vindicated. Undefined, slowly, she reached for the final sleeve in her red binder. This one differed from the others, having a gold tab marked simply, Contingency. She drew out one laminated page and presented it directly to the court clerk. Undefined, Your Honor, it is a notarized 2014 agreement that was signed by Robyn Brown, Cody Brown, and me. It is a temporary trust agreement, one we were all instructed to burn up once the Flagstaff move was done. I never did. Robyn leapt up in alarm. No, she exclaimed. That was never signed. We agreed it was too risky. You signed it, Meri interrupted coldly. At the kitchen table in Lehigh, you were wearing that pink sweater you always said made you feel powerful. The judge raised his hand. Let the document speak for itself. The clerk read it aloud. This agreement affirms that in the event of legal dissolution or financial separation of any of the wives from the family LLC, each party shall retain proportional equity based on contribution history, regardless of emotional or marital status. Signed, Meri Brown. Robyn Sullivan Brown, Cody Brown. Robyn's face collapsed. That wasn't supposed to count, we agreed. You agreed, Meri cut in, because you assumed I destroyed my copy. Christine destroyed hers. Janelle never even received one, but I held on to it because even back then, something in me knew the time would come. The judge leaned forward. And this agreement legally entitles you to a share of the current LLC assets. Yes, Your Honor, based on the equity calculation, I'm entitled to 25.3%. Not 10%, as Kody's records claim, and certainly not 0%, as Robyn insisted during last year's distribution meeting. Kody's head fell into his hands. Robyn whispered to her attorney, visibly trembling. Christine looked over at Meri with new eyes. Not pity, not rivalry, respect. Why didn't you present this sooner? The judge asked. Meri exhaled. Because I wasn't sure I wanted it. I didn't want to fight. I wanted closure. But when you're pushed out of every room, every vote, every meal, every memory. You realize the only thing they'll ever respect is documentation. She turned to Robyn now. You looked me in the eye and told me this agreement was dangerous, that it would divide us, that no one would ever use it. And then you funneled every family asset into a home you bought in your own name. Robyn's lip trembled. I didn't know you still had that. I didn't just have it, Meri said. I made copies certified, stored one in my sister's safe, another in a law office in Utah. She turned to the judge. This was my insurance policy. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood. Love wouldn't protect me, but paper might. The courtroom murmured. The judge looked at the document again. Then we will begin recalculating LLC equity from this point forward, using this agreement as a foundational reference. And as the bailiff collected the laminated proof, Meri sat down for the last time. She didn't need to speak again, because the document had done it for her. Cody was unraveling. The binder, the voicemails, the trust document, each one had cracked his carefully curated image wide open. But now, seated in near defeat, he did what cornered men often do. He turned the spotlight. None of this would be happening, he blurted. If TLC hadn't manipulated everything, they made us look like we were one family. They edited out the tension. They wanted Meri to look isolated. I was just playing along for the sake of the brand. The judge arched a brow. Are you suggesting this court ignored documented evidence because it was filmed? Cody shook his head. I'm saying it was out of my hands. I played the role they asked me to play. Robyn nodded, desperately echoing, we were all told to protect the narrative. Meri didn't flinch. She simply opened a slim gray case and pulled out a labeled disc. Then let's play this, she said calmly. This is unaired footage from 2018, not network edited. This is B-roll. I requested it under fair use through my attorney when I noticed my calendar exclusions were being ignored on screen. She turned to the judge. I gave the production crew permission to wear mics while we were off camera during one of the planning sessions in Flagstaff. I never told them to stop recording. The judge nodded to the technician. Within seconds, a raw, echoey video began to play on screen. A behind-the-scenes glimpse from what fans would have recognized as a casual planning session in Season 13. But this version was different, unfiltered. Cody leaned against a wall, arms crossed, voice barely audible. Just make sure Meri doesn't show up to the vote. She'll want her cut. But she hasn't contributed emotionally in years. Just let her have her fake storyline and move on. A crew member off, Camara asked. Won't the audience notice? Robyn's voice answered, muffled but clear. She's barely in frame anyway, just focus on me and the kids. It sells better. A long silence swept over the court. Then Christine's voice, low, pained. This feels wrong. She is still one of us. Cody snapped back. She's a liability, not a wife. She's just the opening chapter. The video ended, no edits, no context required. Raw proof that the erasure was not accidental. It was choreographed. Robyn's face turned white. That wasn't supposed to be recorded, she murmured. That wasn't supposed to exist. The judge didn't speak. He didn't need to, because now the case had turned. This wasn't just about trust funds, binders, or feelings. This was evidence of a conspiracy to isolate, control, and discard a legal partner. All while maintaining the illusion of unity for the public. Do you want to submit this into evidence? The judge asked. Meri nodded. Under affidavit, certified timestamp. Fair use obtained. She turned to Cody. I kept quiet for a decade while you scripted my silence, but the truth was always rolling in the background. You just never thought I'd keep a copy. And with that, the disc was logged, sealed, and marked as Exhibit G. The footage they tried to bury had now become the nail in the coffin. The courtroom no longer buzzed with tension. It resonated with something heavier, finality. The judge took his time, reviewing Meri's binder, the trust agreement, Dayton's screenshots, the raw footage disc, and every exhibit that had shattered the family myth piece by piece. Then he looked out across the room. This hearing has uncovered a pattern of emotional marginalization, financial deception, and strategic erasure that extends beyond a domestic dispute. What began as a family's personal crisis has now become a public matter of equity, contractual violation, and fiduciary betrayal. Robyn lowered her head, Cody sat back, lips pressed tight as concrete. Meri remained still, the binder closed in front of her like a coffin of the life she once defended. The judge's voice remained firm. Effective immediately, the court recognizes the 2014 contingency agreement as binding. Meri Brown is awarded 25.3% equity in the Brown family, LLC, along with retroactive compensation for withheld distributions dating back to 2015, totaling $792,000. A stunned breath rippled through the gallery. Cody's lawyer whispered something, but the judge cut him off. Furthermore, a formal forensic audit will continue to investigate potential tax fraud, shell LLC laundering, and breach of fiduciary duty. Cody stiffened. The words tax fraud landed like a gavel of their own. And finally, the judge said, eyes trained on Robyn, if it is proven that any of the documents you claimed did not exist, such as the signed trust agreement, were deliberately concealed, you may face civil penalties and sanctions from this court. Robyn said nothing. She couldn't. The oxygen had left her. The courtroom was silent. And then the judge turned to Meri. You may speak if you wish, she stood slowly, eyes never leaving Cody. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her voice was the same one that had been silenced for 12 years. And yet it carried the weight of a lifetime. I loved a man who saw me as foundational, until I became inconvenient. I loved a family that told me I was the legacy, until I stopped agreeing with the script. I stayed through isolation, through mockery, through silence. Not because I was weak, but because I believed love meant endurance. Her hand shook just slightly, but silence was never love. Silence was what they asked of me so they could thrive off my absence. She turned to Robyn. You watched it happen. You smiled through it. Then to Cody. You orchestrated it. You lied to protect your own image while I buried mine. She took a breath, then delivered the line that would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. You erased me from the calendar, the bank accounts, the screen, but not from the truth, and the truth just got recorded. The judge stood. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell. Cameras clicked. Robyn stood frozen. Cody remained seated, the reality of the fallout descending like thunder. And Meri, she walked out, not as a wife, not as a supporting character, not as a silent partner in a collapsing house of cards, but as the woman who finally turned silence into testimony, pain into evidence, and erasure into power. Outside the court, the desert humidity slapped them differently. The cameras weren't rolling, the microphones were off, but the silence was deafening. Reporters swirled like vultures, repeating the same question ad infinitum. Meri, what are you going to do with the money? But she didn't respond. Not yet. She merely glided past them with the same unassuming dignity that had cost her so much, including her marriage, and now protected her. Back home, Cody stormed out the back door, his attorney by his side, cursing about appeals and media smears, while Robyn brought up the rear, shades hiding her puffy, tear-streaked eyes. But the true drama wasn't from the cameras or the headlines. It was what happened just a few hours later, a leaked internal memo from the Brown family's since imploded business manager, addressed to all wives, dated the 17th of March 2017. The subject line read, Strategy for Reducing Meri's Influence in the Public Narrative. The body of the email outlined talking points to gently pivot focus toward Robyn's growth as the emotional anchor, and advised Cody to limit Meri's solo scenes unless they supported the idea of her withdrawal from the family vision. Attached was a spreadsheet listing visibility allocations across 4 wives. Meri's column showed a sharp drop in season 8, and beyond the letter was dated actual and never intended to be read. TLC wouldn't comment, but within 48 hours they took down 3 old shows from their site, each featuring Meri getting hurt in some way. The edit record was verified. Stealth censorship, masquerading as network maintenance. Meanwhile, Christine posted a statement on her social media. We all knew something was wrong, but we didn't know how far it went back. I am sorry, Meri. Janelle reposted it, simply adding 3 words, she deserves more. And for the first time since the decision, Meri answered, not with a press conference or a rant, but an Instagram story alone. A photo of her binder on the courthouse table. No caption, just the truth. Next, late on that evening, a never-broadcast 2022 podcast recording appeared of a raw pre-interview between Meri and a now-gone producer. The producer posed the question, "Why stay so long if it hurts so much?" And Meri's voice responded, shattered but courageous, "Because if I left without producing the receipts, he'd claim I made it up. I needed to establish what was done to me so nobody else would be gaslit by love." That single sentence inspired millions of shares. The clip went viral, spliced into reaction videos, TikToks, fan essays, and headlines. Meri Brown was no longer just an ex-reality television wife. She had become a signifier of taking back narrative, of living through image control, of incinerating the script rather than adhering to it. The Brown legacy had fractured, not through divorce or scandal, but through documentation, and no one could dispute it anymore. The world didn't turn the same way after Meri Brown talked. Headlines that had once read TLC's beloved polygamist family were now being replaced with words such as TLC's most calculated betrayal and the woman who outlawed her own silencing. And in the deep glass encased conference rooms of TLC's executive office, tough choices were being made. Producers trawled through past footage, lawyers searched through contracts, and PR staff wrote words that scrupulously bypassed the terms cover, up, erasure, and gendered financial abuse. The job had been done. Audiences weren't simply upset, they were mobilized. Ratings on reruns of past seasons of Sister Waters fell as supporters called on the network to end profiteering off of manipulated suffering. Even former cast members began speaking out, anonymously affirming that some wives were purposely filmed to appear unstable or disconnected. The cut orders had come down from higher up. And then, a turn of events no one could have predicted. A new network, one that specializes in investigative journalism, not reality filler, approached Meri herself. They weren't interested in Sister Wives 2.0. They wanted a limited series her story, unapologetic, and better yet, they wanted her to present it. Title: Erased, the women who vanish inside their own families. The pilot episode would be on her, but the subsequent one would be about other women from religious, corporate, or media families who had been pushed aside, silenced, or gaslighted out of visibility. Initially, Meri was hesitant. After all, she'd spent 12 years having told her that her truth wasn't saleable. But this time, she owned the rights. The papers were hers, the audio, the footage, the binder. It was all hers. She didn't have to ask permission anymore. Cody, meanwhile, released a statement filled with half apologies and twisted justifications. He blamed the network. He blamed stress. He blamed Meri's emotional walls. But no one was buying it anymore. Even longtime defenders in the fanbase began to unravel their loyalty. And Robyn, she disappeared from public view altogether. Her social media accounts went dark. Publicist emails went unanswered. Rumors swirled that she had quietly moved out of the Flagstaff house, now placed under legal lien due to the forensic audit. Then came the final court letter. The LLC had officially been dissolved. Assets liquidated. Meri's retroactive payout is wired in full. TLC's next season contract was put on hold pending creative reevaluation. And amidst all the uproar, Meri shared only one thing: a video, plain, quiet, a close-up of her clutching the red binder in one hand and the trust agreement in the other. She spoke in a voiceover. "They erased me from the calendar, from the conversations, from the narrative. But I kept the receipts, and now I will write the story." And so, the woman they sought to silence became the narrator of all the truth they never assumed would be spoken. No longer a sister wife, not just a survivor, undefined, but a documentarian of her own liberty.